once you have understood that what is governance, now starts the task of managing security. Okay. So once you are looking at management of security, it starts from, as we saw in governance, even security management starts from a top-down approach. Security should never be driven from bottom up. That means, security requirements should not be starting from users to managers. Otherwise, it should be driven from the top. And that's why it is a responsibility of the top management. Okay. Now, in smaller companies, it can be driven by CEO. In bigger companies, it is driven by a appointment called CISO, Chief Information Security Officer. Security management is not responsibility of IT. It is not. Okay. Security is responsibility of the top management. Always remember that. If somebody says who is responsible for security, don't say the CISO is responsible or the IT is responsible. Security management is the responsibility of the top management. That top management might be the CISO or the CEO, doesn't matter. It might be the board of directors. But it is the responsibility of the top management, which then percolates down to the appointments. It could be a CEO, it could be a CIO, it could be a CISO. Smaller companies do not have the leeway to have so many people. So the CEO itself might, take on the duties of the Chief Information Security Officer if he is capable enough. He has to be capable to take that decision of how to implement information security in the organization. So the starting point of security management starts with a security policy or InfoSec policy. Okay. Now, InfoSec policy is a policy which is a big document or a document which gives the overall perspective of security in an organization. It does not have to be specific. Policies are never specific. Policies are broad. It's a broad coverage of intent of the management, right? How we need to secure our organization. Okay. What will be the broad factors into consideration? That is what information security policy lays down. The information security policy provides a guiding light for the information security professionals, IT professionals, HR professionals, anyone in the organization to understand how this organization means to implement information security in the organization, right? This security policy is approved by the senior management. The senior management has to approve it. The CEO should sign it. Somebody from the top should be signing it because that gives importance to this security policy document, right? It might incorporate a lot of things like what are the risks to the organization, what are the compliance requirements, and how we should be able to meet them. Okay. Now, once this policy has been issued, right, what happens next is that all respective or verticals of the organization can plan, can implement security. Okay. Whenever you do such actions, such broad level actions, these prove your due diligence. When you do these broad actions of having governance in place, having security management in place, you've issued a information security policy which has been top-down approach. That means the organizational key appointments have done their due diligence. Okay, this is the concept of due diligence. Okay, once you do that, these become evidences, okay, of your due diligence by having an infosec policy, by having review meetings, but documenting all these review meetings, having board level discussions on infosec, Once you do all this becomes part of the evidence that the management has been due diligence. Now, wherever you are due diligent, it saves you from legal complications. If suppose tomorrow there's a hack which takes place, but you see that the management has done all it could do to implement security in the organization, the legal liability decreases. Okay. This is a very important concept, and please remember this. Okay. Now, due diligence is a bigger responsibility on top of the management. But what happens is, once an organization is due diligent, the people below, they start following practices which keeps their verticals secure. Okay, the managers start working on the infosec policy, the technicians start implementing controls, the users are more diligent in their use. When they do these actions, such actions are called due care. The small effort which everyone puts in place to keep their organization secure is called the due care effort. And the responsible things which the management has done to ensure that the organization follows the information security management principles is called due diligence. Okay, very important. Both the concepts, questions will come from such places. Right. Now, once an organization has laid down infosec policy, has governance in place, senior management has approved all this, now they need to plan their objectives. And such planning, security management planning, is done over not in 2 months, 3 months. These are long-term plans. So you have long plans which can range over from 0 to 5 years. Such plans are called strategic plans. To meet these strategic plans, you make smaller plans, okay, which can range from 0 to 1 year or 6 months. Such plans are called tactical plans. And to implement these tactical plans, you have shorter windows, okay, to implement these objectives, which are called operational plans. Okay. Once your organization has given you a vision of what it needs to do in 5 years, 4 years, 3 years, they've laid down what they need to, reach in next 1 year. Okay. And then you've allocated resources, allocated budget to meet those tactical objectives, which you're supposed to do in a year. Then you have implemented those as a operational plan. Okay. Now, operational plans are short windows which help you attain your tactical and therefore your strategic objectives. Okay. And once you have these plans in place, what results are organizational processes. Then you create processes around how will people enter the office, how will configuration takes place, how will this take place, how will HR execute its task. So it will be a plethora of processes which will be created over these plans, okay, so that your overall information security objective is met. Okay. And that is the sequence, that you have a governance committee, you've done your governance, you've done your security management, you have laid down your plans. Okay. Now, at times, what happens is, once you are doing all this in your organization is fine. But what happens in a lot of business operations is you carry out mergers, you acquire companies, you divest. Okay. Now, imagine your company is doing pretty well. You have done all this strategic planning. Okay. Everything is, there in place. And you suddenly acquired a small company which you require for your operations. The moment you acquired this company, what you notice is whatever systems they've had, they bring vulnerability to you. And this was not assessed. That's why whenever there are mergers, there are acquisitions, and there are divestitures taking place, you have to carry out a proper security review. And this forms part of your overall security governance. Why? You need to have that foresight, right? I'll give you a case of JP Morgan Chase. What happened? JP Morgan Chase acquired a company for $1 billion. This company was being run by a lady who sold the company to JP Morgan Chase for $1 billion. 1 billion is 8,000 crores. When JP Morgan Chase operationalized that application, they realized that uh, the users on the platform were inflated by bots. That means there were false users created by the selling organization. Okay, the company which sold the product or sold the company to JP Morgan Chase, they fooled them by having bot users on their platform. JP Morgan Chase went and filed a lawsuit. The lady is inside the jail or inside prison, right? Because US compliances are very strict. And she's facing a uh, 12-year jail sentence. Fine. They fooled, it's fine. But look at JP Morgan Chase, world's largest financial bank. They did not carry out due diligence on their part while acquiring this company. That's a clear-cut failure of governance, right? And bearing so much of financial loss. Ultimately, what happened? They bore the financial loss and that lady went to prison. Okay. So these are the implications of mergers, acquisitions, and divestitures. Okay. Now, whenever mergers take place, right? Whenever mergers takes place, you are supposed to carry out an on-site assessment. Okay. You should go on site, carry out assessment. You should do a document review. Ask for the documentation, right? So that it becomes evidence. You should review their policies and processes. This is important for auditors. Okay. And you might also require to carry out a third-party audit. Ask someone else to go and audit that organization so that you get an independent review of the company which you are acquiring or hiring or getting merged with. Okay. So this takes care of our security governance. Fine. So you have to understand that. Now, once you read Cybex, now reading Cybex now will become easier once I have explained this entire story around what is we are trying to see. Okay. Now, security management, we saw that it is the responsibility of the top management. Next part, next thing that the top management is supposed to do so that the security can be managed, implemented, is by defining roles and responsibilities. You have to define roles and responsibilities, because if you don't define roles and responsibilities, then security will nobody will be bothered about roles and responsibilities. Now, in organizations, there might be different nomenclature and different terminologies. As far as ISC2 is concerned, CISSP is concerned, there are few very, very categorical security roles which should be defined in an organization. The topmost person who is overall responsible for the security, he might be a CEO or CIO or CISO or something, is the senior manager. He is responsible for security in the organization, right? That is the senior manager. The second layer is what ISC2 defines is something called a security professional. Now, security professional is hands-on guys, hands-on security professional who are going to implement information security policies inside the organization. They might be the ones who are responsible for responding to anything which goes wrong as far as security is concerned. That might be an IT person, that might be a security person, doesn't matter. But he is responsible for implementing security in the organization. Okay. It might be IT or a IS professional, anyone. Right. Next is whatever you are protecting. Okay. You are protecting certain systems. Okay. There has to be someone who owns those systems. Okay. If your data is riding over networks, over endpoints, okay, over routers, and they overall form part of a particular business process, then these all become one asset. Okay. And somebody should be owning this asset. If something goes wrong, somebody should take that ownership that, okay, this belongs to me. And such appointments are called asset owners. Asset owner has the overall responsibility of the entire system, which is handling the data, the network, the endpoints, the information, right? Called asset owner. Okay. And the next point is a custodian. Now, at times, asset owners and data owners are used consecutively. Data owners are the owner of the data. Okay. They are responsible for, if they may not be handling the data directly, but if there is a leak, if there is a threat to the data, they are responsible no matter what. Look at Sundar Pichai. If something goes wrong, he goes and stands in front of the Congress. When there was a GDPR violation on Google, Sundar Pichai was standing in the EU court of law. He was the asset owner. He was the owner of the entire system, that's Google, right? So some small component of Google is acquiring data which is not compliant with GDPR. Sundar Pichai was representing. He is the asset owner, right? But say something goes wrong, right? Like in case of, you know, any organization which has many verticals, and something goes wrong in one vertical, okay? And there's someone responsible for that data, right? But overall asset owner might be Google, but inside there might be many processes and many kind of data being handled. Whosoever is responsible for that data, that particular appointment is the data owner. Okay. Now, data owner concept is very, very critical in privacy regulations. Say this vertical is acquiring KYC data or PII data. Okay. PII is something which is related to you personally, or it is collecting health data. Okay. Now, this person or this particular entity, their process is collecting this data. So he is responsible directly for protecting that data. But he may not do it himself, right? He allots that responsibility, right, to a custodian. Generally, owners give the policy, okay, how the data or the asset will be protected. The custodians, somebody who's got the custody of the system or the custody of the data, they implement controls. Okay, whether encryption, whether backup, okay, they are supposed to implement these policies on behalf of the asset or data owners. Okay, and then finally comes the user who uses the system, and auditor who audits that everything is in place.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe our channel.